Welcome back to Thrive with R3. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Sianneh Mulbah, the Chief People Officer for the Timberwolves NBA basketball team and Lynx WNBA basketball team. I am Jamie Gassmann, your co-host of Thrive with R3, and I'm here with my other co-host, George Vergolias.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here again, and we're thrilled to have Sianneh with us here. We're going to talk quite a bit about the role of building talent and creating diversity and supporting your people in a high-stress, high-pressure organization. So we're looking forward to the discussion today.
So jumping right in, Sianneh, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here on the show and have you share kind of your unique challenges, unique perspectives working in the sports industry. So to start out, can you describe your journey to becoming the first Black and first female C-level executive within the Timberwolves organization? And also share a little bit about, which employees in the organization kind of fall under your purview.
So Chief People and Inclusion Officer with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. And I have been with the franchise for 13 seasons. So when you're in sports, you talk about your years and seasons. So I just finished probably the most exciting Timberwolves season, and we're tipping off a very good Lynx season this last month. So my journey into sports, into the role I'm in now, I guess I would say I never imagined or even knew that I could work in professional sports. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota, so it's like 4 hours north of here, straight up through all the lakes, all the resort towns, and graduated in a class of probably 60. And of that 60, not everyone actually had their degrees. So just like a small town type childhood that I had. And I went to school at Concordia in St. Paul. I was a volleyball player in high school, played volleyball at Concordia. And then my second year of college, I welcomed my son, Christopher. So that kind of changed my path of like what was next for me. And at that time, I knew I wanted to work with people. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I love little kids. So I didn't quite know for sure. And my first internship was with a nonprofit for teen moms. And it was a lot. I just don't know if I was strong enough for that. And so I kind of pivoted thinking through like what really I was attracted to, and did an internship with the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe, who have 17 at that time different departments. And I was able to really get into the human resources aspects of all of those different departments. So that kind of is what pivoted me into human resources. So I've worked in the nonprofit world, which is definitely in my heart. Human resources roles. I've worked for telecommunications, and then I landed here. So that experience, I never knew, like I said, I never knew that you could actually work in human resources in sports, because when you're at a game, regardless of what league you're watching, all you notice are the ushers, the security guards, the basketball team, and the coaching staff. And that was my perspective of what the sports world was as well. But through a friend within my HR network, I was referred into this candidate profile, just interview process. And it was a whirlwind. I actually had just had my daughter, who's now a teenager officially as of Friday. And I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't looking for something new, but it was very intriguing. It was probably a 2-week process and really understanding the business behind sports. And we have the team, but we're a full-fledged business behind everything that goes on behind the team within business and operations. So it was a learning process, and I was excited about the challenge. So that, to me, at that time, we had, I think, 98 full-time staff. And right now, in my role, I started off as the director of human resources, and it was me and a part-time payroll person. So that also tells you kind of where HR was as part of the priority of the organization, right? We were processing paperwork. And it was a reality check. I was in the director role for 5 years. And I have always been lucky enough where HR has been reporting into directly an executive. And so that for me has been a benefit not only for myself and my team, but for the organization, because that has helped us really become a strategic partner in all of our business initiatives. I oversee all of the people operations for our business sides and our operation sides. And we have 4 franchises. So everyone knows about the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx, but we also have a development league team down in Iowa. So that interstate, just understanding different employment laws and all of that, and starting up a new organization in a different state. And then we have an NBA 2K gaming team, which we've had, I believe, for the last 4 to 5 years. The employee life cycle from that point of talent acquisition, how we're training and developing them, how we are performance managing them to be better, or maybe managing out the compensation benefits, as well as organizational effectiveness. And that for us has been something that we've grown into, because what a lot of people see again and don't realize with professional sports is that we're small businesses, medium-sized businesses, for a lot of the teams who may have just one franchise. We have 4, but a unique piece for us is that we don't own our arena. And so some of the teams, the Vikings don't own the arena. They play at US Bank Stadium. We play at Target Center. While I believe they own their arena with the Minnesota hockey team. And so there's different levels of staffing that we're responsible for. So for us, we are responsible for the business of sales, marketing, all of the now digital content that you see on your social media feeds. We manage all of that. We have broadcast technology. So when you are in the games and you see what's going up on the scoreboard and also on the news feeds, we have a team that manages the technical side of that, communications, public relations. We have pretty much everything. What's really grown a lot with us as well is business analytics. And that is the ticket pricing that you see, and also with our sales team, how we're getting the leads for the campaigns. So we are staffing and recruiting for a variety of types of roles. So I work alongside all of our vice presidents and our chief level team members, and it's always something new. So we're continuing to grow. As far as the basketball operations side, our players are managed they have a collective bargaining agreement. So there's a lot of things that are just in place through their union and the NBA. And we're the facilitators of their payroll, their benefits, some mandatory trainings that we have to do, everyone has to do just as part of being a part of the league. We have like anti-gambling training where there's no betting, no tipping, no fixing, which you may see in media and news feeds. So everyone goes through that, and that's one of my roles is making sure everyone gets that done. And then we have respect in the workplace training that they have to do. With the player side, that is kind of their core things that we work with them on. But I'm also chief integrity officer for the basketball operations. So what that means is just making sure that those resources are in place and we're in compliance with those requirements. As an organization, we really focus on being one organization. And so what that means for my responsibilities is ensuring that we're communicating consistently. They know that they can come to HR if there's an issue, because that wasn't always the case because we kind of worked in silos. So really building those relationships and being available. I'm on text chats with a lot of them, just like if they need anything or just have a question, and just getting people comfortable with utilizing us for what we're here for. We're a team of 256 professionals that are all here just really making sure that our fans have a great experience when they come in for the games.
There's a number of things in there that just fascinate me. One is there's a statement we've all heard, right? If you want to make the universe or if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Or tell her your plans, right? And what I love about your background, because it mirrors mine, is I always had goals, and yet I was always open to other experiences that came my way. And what's interesting about your background is you didn't set out to be an HR and chief people officer and talent acquisition officer of a sports team, right? You kind of had a number of other experiences when you were younger. What I'm curious about, Sianneh, is have any of those prior experiences before you ever even got into HR or ever got into sports, how did they shape you or prepare you for the role you do now and the changes you've seen? Because again, 13 years ago, it sounds like it was a really different organization than it is today.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah,
did
it
that shape you?
definitely.
How did those prior experiences shape you into the leader you are today?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I've been really lucky with each of the opportunities that I've had to have great leaders. Or if I didn't have a great leader in those one or two instances, I was able to really understand why, like what wasn't working for me, like maybe what were the challenges that I need to be better on. And I'm probably the biggest critic of myself. But I would also go back to the beginning of like, I had to be able to just adjust, and so I just in life, I just being a mom and being a student athlete, like you have just all these things that just change and you have to get used to like maybe not just plant your feet in the ground, but be ready to pivot. So I think that's one of my strengths. And so that to me was one of the things that when I came into this job, things definitely changed, right? And knowing that our team it's set up to be great, but we don't know how performance is going to be every year, and that may impact like what are we focusing on as an organization and what do I have to do to support our staff during that time. And we're really lucky right now to be coming off a successful season for our Timberwolves, but that wasn't always the case. We have been very lucky with our WNBA team to really get a taste of they have 4 championships, right? And so we know as a business, as a staff, that we are able to support that. But I think for me, just that flexibility and not getting too high, not getting too low has been what has helped me. And I didn't always have that when I was younger in my career, right? So some of the challenges that I experienced earlier in my career was one example would be like going from peer to leader. And that's just jarring in itself, right? But you really learn a lot about yourself and how to manage how to manage relationships differently when you do have now you have authority and maybe someone wasn't as happy about you having that authority, but being able to get that relationship where you need it to be. And that takes confidence, that takes really understanding who you are, and we don't always have that, right? There's that's something that I had to learn, and then just how much more power you have when you finally find your confidence. So I think that experience was pivotal to me.
What's interesting about what you're sharing is what we know from the psychology literature on resilience is I call it resilience is contagious. Like if you develop resilience in one domain, it branches out to other domains. And there's a corollary to sports, right? Like if you listen to Michael Jordan interview or Wayne Gretzky, any of these slightly older, right, legends, they'll talk about as they were coming up, they did multi-sports development. And that made them a better hockey player. That made them a better basketball player. And so you're talking about how you developed agility, right? Psychological agility to things. And I love that as a story for young would-be leaders or even entrepreneurs, and realizing that just getting really good at sales is part of maybe what your goal should be, or really good at managing people, but also develop agility and resilience across other domains, because that is going to be useful and it's going to allow flexibility. And I love how you kind of pepper that into your experience. That's
Yeah,
great.
definitely. And I think too, like understanding what your business is super important. So like that one skill that
Absolutely.
you have to understand the full game of basketball to make that one skill effective, right? So I
Right.
think any skill that you have and want to be great at, you can do in the sports industry. But you have to understand like what's the overall what are we working towards, and
Right.
what are the financials? What does that mean, right? And seeing how you fit in and being able to adapt, not losing yourself, but adapt and really show your skills,
Yeah.
utilize them, and feel like you're adding value.
Yeah.
I like how you talk about being authentic and also, giving that feedback. I strongly believe that that's the leader's job. As hard as it can be sometimes to give that feedback, you are doing that employee a favor and you're also helping to grow them as an individual. And I love that concept of, you know, expand your knowledge of the organization. Don't stay stuck just within this one role. You know, be aware of everything around you because, you know, might open your eyes to maybe a different role or something that you want to pursue. You know, you've done a lot in your role at the Timberwolves and Lynx. You've, you know, multiple awards, um, you know, within this role. So looking at, you know, kind of your tenure, what have been some of the most significant leadership lessons that you've learned while you've been in this role?
I think it would go back to the authenticity. When I first started, I came in as a director and there was already a structure in place. And I had this in my head that I'm HR, I have to be this. I was rigid. I just wasn't, I was making policies. I wasn't being a business partner, right? And I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't my best self. And it was like 6 months in where I was like, I hate this. And I don't like using the word hate, but I did not like it. I wasn't happy. It was filtering into like lack of confidence because I wasn't being authentic to me. And once I just let that go, I am here 13 years later, right? It was literally like July of my first year, 2012. I'm still here and I have a network of people that I adore and I love working with. And we have a group of female leaders where like we're each other's people, and really just letting down that wall, it helped me to be a better peer. It helped me be a better staff member, but also just a better leader. And it didn't come overnight, but it definitely, as I just reminded myself why I was here and who I was, got stronger. And I think kind of helped me get into the role and level within the organization that I am in. I really think it's important to know our staff, not just my staff, but our staff. So one thing that I do just with that authenticity is I meet one-on-one with all of our new employees. So we have a process called 30, 60, 90, and I was a part of that. Now that my team has gone from 2 or 3 of us to 9, I am a part of that at the director level and above. But regardless, I meet with every new employee within the first 2 weeks. And I don't want to know their resume. I don't want to know like what their goals are in 5 years. I want to know about them.
You mentioned earlier that when you came in, things were very siloed, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you just mentioned that the culture was different. And yet
Yeah.
now you've really helped develop it into a much more engaged, interactive, collaborative, and I'll say supportive culture.
Yeah.
How did you do that? What were some of the things along the way that you learned or that you might recommend for that HR director that's out there and has a siloed, kind of old school, not very
Mhm.
collaborative or supportive environment? What would you recommend to him or her?
Yeah, I would say, we were siloed not only with ops and business, but within the business units, right? There was sales, there was marketing, there was HR, there was finance. Like we all had our strategic objectives that meant only something to us. So really starting from that standpoint, outlining what are organizational objectives and what are we doing as department leads to ensure that the organization is getting there, and filtering that into our employees. But even peeling that back a layer, we weren't meeting the basic needs of our employees, right? It's kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like I don't think we were meeting that basic need where we didn't have a 401k match. We are working downtown Minneapolis. Parking is expensive. And compensation wasn't that high. So we paid for parking. We now have identified parking locations for our staff that we take care of, so they don't have to worry about even just getting to work, right? Like I know as a single mom, like I experienced days back then where it was like, how am I going to pay for $20 to go to work? And so taking care of that need, instituting the match, and we've been hyper focused on ensuring that our compensation is to a level that is competitive. Within sports in general, compensation has been like 15 to 25% lower than market across all of the leagues. So we were one of the first teams to invest into outside consulting on what compensation should look like. And we weighed more heavily on what our local market looks like, because people don't leave us to go to other teams. They're leaving to go to Target, to General Mills, to the ad agency down the street. And so we had to realize who we were competing against. So that was just setting the basic need, right? One thing I'm super excited about is on game nights, we provide game night meals for our staff, and it wasn't the best experience for them. So that basic need that we thought we were providing, like, it was actually terrible for some people. So this Lynx season, we launched a whole new catering experience for our employees. We're building out an employee lounge that fits everyone, because we've outgrown our space just with the business growing, and making it a full experience. So that's one of the things, again, just meeting that basic need. And then we've been layering on just the structure of what employees need to have to be successful and to be fully present as you can be, right? We all have things that go on in life while they're at work. So our performance reviews, we have employee resource groups. That has probably been one of the most impactful things that have expanded throughout the last 4 years. We also started measuring what our culture, what our engagement was, what our satisfaction was. And that was something that would have been taboo, like when I started with the organization. And actually, we did participate in a survey, 2013, and our engagement score was 13% engaged. It was terrible. And it was like, how do you share that feedback with your employees if you're not fully equipped to make the changes? And so we just kept building on that each year, more formally, probably within the last 7 years. And we participate in a team engagement survey that's distributed by the NBA that most of the teams participate in. And we can consistently feel confident that we're now going to have an engagement score between 88 and 92 each year.
And you're hitting on two things that I love from a perspective of shaping cultures and making them more resilient. And one is measurement, right? Measuring how are we doing? And then not constantly, but periodically, but having this continual improvement and continual innovation mindset.
How did you start with that measurements? Like, how did you approach the measurements? Like, I think you mentioned employee surveying. How did you decide year over year, where were you going to focus your efforts in building on that program that you've established?
For us, what we look at, the first couple years that we did it, we really focused on any area. We measure across 11 dimensions of engagement. And so we looked at each dimension, and anything that was below 75%, it was really 74%, we would action plan against, right? And we didn't start measuring compensation or anything like that, but like benefits, it was balance. Those just have always been our lower ones. And then employee development. So we looked at anything like that. And then each department is responsible for their own action plan, because any team that has 5 or more responses, they have their own engagement survey. So then each leader worked with their team in HR to create an action plan to identify, for this group, what does that mean? And so that is where we came in with the compensation structure. We didn't have that previously, right? And now we're working on updating it, being more transparent with what is in it and the why behind it. One area where we struggle in, and I believe it's like 78%, is employee development. We're a small organization, and it's difficult to say, okay, this year you're going to be this. And then once you accomplish this, this, and this, then you can go on to this level. And then you're going to be a manager, director, whatever. We have tried to create actual like tangible skills for each position. And we can't do it everywhere across the organization, but where it makes sense, we've been focused on that. So tackling that development, tackling compensation, we're still not where we want to be. So that those are areas that we look at every year. And then with employee development, we also just launched a leadership academy for our mid-level managers, directors, and we partnered with University of South Florida, former professors from there to help us to create a curriculum, like an actual, like tested and true, tried and true curriculum where our employees are gaining the business acumen that they need to be leaders, but also those soft skills. I'm all about like leading with empathy and the authenticity and really understanding you so you can lead through that, but also leading through our core values.
A lot of organizations take for granted the improvements instead of saying,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing well? And let's keep doubling down on that, right? Let's keep
Right.
expanding that. Something you said made me think, um, there, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that as a sports franchise, actually as four sports franchises, right?
Yes.
You're under the spotlight, right? You can't not be under the spotlight, especially with you have a number of high marquee players, and across all of those franchises. Um, Given that, how do you prioritize mental health of your staff, the organization as a whole, and then particularly if there is some kind of critical incident that affects maybe one of the people in the organization or even one of the players? How do you manage that, or how do you begin to approach that? Because again, that's a unique role than being an HR or people leader, even at a Fortune 500 company, who isn't quite in the spotlight every week the way that a sports franchise would be.
What's in the spotlight is what happens on the court, and our staff are behind the scenes and may not have any impact on, they don't have any impact on what is happening on the court. So I think that resilience and mental health, the mental health resources come by providing the time off when they need it. We have a flexible work environment. The demand of sports is immense. So we are very cognizant on like looking at schedule. And if there is a week where we have 4 home games, we provide that flexibility on what they can do. The team side, they have just a plethora of resources available. There's a team psychologist available. There's resources that we have available to us through the NBA. And the NBA provides all of our staff access to Headspace as well. We haven't been able to find that golden nugget for an actual benefit that we can provide our staff. We have an EAP service available, which I'm sure a lot of organizations do, but we found that the traditional EAP service doesn't work for our people, right? We need something that's available through my text messages, through an app. And so we've been able to institute some benefits through our benefit provider that is more like on demand. And as we go through benefit renewal each year, we look at what options might be available. And so like this year, we're going to look at what can a more modern employee assistance program look like for our staff. Do regular all staff meetings quarterly, where our CEO leads them, and he is like a leader of the people, and he can relate, and he just is able to bring all of our staff in, including us, around like, let's focus on the main thing, and our main thing is to be the best professionals that we can be. So somewhat it's a little bit of separating what's happening on the court from what we're doing every day as an organization, because we have to be proud, like you said, we have to be proud of the things that we've done. And this year, a lot of our departments, like our PR team, has won national awards because of what they've accomplished this year. Our marketing team has won multiple awards. Our sales team is leading, one of the leaders in the league on the ticket revenue that they've generated, and just by being ready, right? We had to be ready for this moment.
What great messaging that your CEO is front and center and out there, right? And it's interesting that you mentioned about the EAPs. We do a lot of work at R3 with EAPs, but we also do a lot of work directly with corporations, large law firms, other franchises around offering tailored solutions that aren't traditionally supported, just as you said, by the out of the box EAP environment. And so it's really interesting that you're saying that, because that's one of the things that we have found a niche doing as well over the years. And there really is a need for some of that in some cases, right? There's some workplaces where that traditional EAP model fits perfectly. And then there's others where you really need more of a curated or tailored approach to finding those solutions. So I love that you flagged that. That's powerful.
Well, and workplaces are so unique, and you're in an industry where I have to imagine there's different challenges that, other industries don't face or face differently. So having, what your team needs, and the dynamic of the different generations within your groups, is going to be slightly different than probably what some others need. And
Yeah.
I celebrate that you pick up on that and you're flagging it so that you can focus in on how do I get them that right resource.
Yeah, like you don't want to provide a benefit that people aren't utilizing. Like one of the benefits that we currently offer is volunteer time off. And so like people don't utilize it as much as we'd like them to use it. So just being creative on what does that look like? When can you do this? And just communication, I think, is something that we've had to improve on as an HR team, just on being more creative. Because once you see an email from HR, you probably don't really want to read what's in it, even though I'm offended by that because I think they're pretty great emails. But we started utilizing a software that is kind of like it's a marketing tool, similar to like a Marketo, where it's all like database, right? But our database are our employees, and then we can use like a Canva like platform to create more interactive emails and like consistently branded emails as well. So they know like, oh, I can click this. I like the pictures. It just looks aesthetically more entertaining, and you actually want to read it. So we've had to be creative with our group of employees that we have on how we're communicating, what we're communicating, the cadence of what we're communicating, all of it.
You've shared so much about this journey as you've kind of moved through your tenure, even back before you were in HR, and just the things you've learned along the way. Now, looking out over the future and the evolution of HR and the landscape of professional sports and over the next decade, what do you envision is going to be that evolution? What are you thinking is going to be a prime priority for your group?
I would say, I mean, we as a business want to continue to grow, right? We want to explore like what does adding more to what we currently provide to our fans and to our community look like? So for me, that is preparing my staff for that development of maybe an increase of employees. Where are we finding these employees? How are we engaging these employees? And so that is like strategic workforce planning, which we have noodled in, and we've gotten to a great place at the size of the organization we are at now. But what does that look like maybe if we double in size? And how do we support all of these people? And how do we help our leaders think more on succession planning and strategic planning and compensation? So those are my challenges. And now taking on DE&I, just really getting into the strategy of what that looks like. We've built a solid base on our inclusion efforts with our leadership that we had in place. And what's the next level of that? To my vision of DEI for us would be all of our leaders, which a lot of them do, lead through the lens of inclusion. And so what are we doing to get them those tools they need, where it's just who we are. And we're like right there, but there's little tweaks and just getting it to be a more, not a more natural, but just who we are as an organization.
I was just going to thank Sianneh for joining us. It's been really enlightening and helpful to hear, because we don't always hear from a unique perspective in these arenas, right? So thank you so much for your insights. Jamie, any final words that you want to add?
And it's just so great to hear your success story and the journey that you've taken
Amen.
the Timberwolves and Lynx on in terms of building out that corporate organization that's behind the scenes. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all that great information. I know I learned a lot from it. That found it very insightful. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you all for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Thrive with R3.
R3 is a workplace behavioral health pioneer and innovator, providing rapid response and ongoing behavioral health solutions that help people and organizations recover, perform, and thrive in the wake of disruption and stress.
For more episodes, insights, and resources, visit thrivewithr3.com.